Hello again, everybody. For this video, I want to talk a little more about the poetry essay, which is due pretty soon, coming up. Our drafts were due last Friday on the 2nd. I believe the final draft is due the 12th, right? Which I think is next Monday. So we still have some time to work on this, obviously. But I just wanted to, all your comments for your drafts will be available by Monday morning. Probably by the time you're watching this video, you should be able to see your comments there. I should also say I'm going to once again do the optional meetings. If you guys want to sign up for a meeting this Wednesday, I'll make myself available for that. So I'll list another discussion thread with available times and stuff. I think the few people who did this last time would tell you that it was helpful. No matter how much I try to give you comments or feedback written, I just think that it can't really replace the kind of, vocal interaction where you can ask me a question, I can respond, and then if it doesn't make sense, you can just tell me that doesn't make sense, and I'll try to do better and stuff like that. So I would really encourage you guys to sign up for these. I think that they will help you write your essay. I think it'll make writing the essay easier, and maybe it'll give you more confidence and make you feel like you know that you're going in the right direction and that kind of stuff. So I would encourage you guys to sign up for this. I'll have that posted on Moodle, where you can spawn in the thread, and then I could send you a WebEx thing, and we could do a virtual meeting like that. I'm also asking for questions about the essay to be submitted for Monday. Questions or just what's been hardest for you, So I know some people might say, well, I don't have a question. Well, then what's been the hardest for you as you've been working on your rough draft, as you've been trying to do this, thesis, organization, research, whatever it is. Please give me some questions and some difficulties, and I'm also having that be part of your grade, right? So that's a very easy grade for you to get, but I do need those submitted by Monday because I'm going to make a video answering those questions probably Tuesday or Wednesday. So I just wanted to remind you all of that. Okay. Oh, and then for the rough drafts, I didn't get that many of them. I think I got like 4 maybe. So I really would like to get some more of those. How about this? I'll say if you can submit me a rough draft by like Monday, I will try to look at it, by the end of the day on Wednesday at the latest. So you can still get some feedback and still have some time to revise before you hand in something. But I really would like to see more of these. I think that handing in one of those rough drafts and getting my feedback is pretty crucial to getting a good grade here. And especially, it just lets you know if you're going on the right path, if you're on topic and stuff like that. So please hand in some more rough drafts. I'm a little bit worried. Okay, so I guess I should say, first of all, I just want to remind everyone that the poems that we have to write about, your choices are Harlem by Langston Hughes, Kitchenette Building by Gwendolyn Brooks, Mississippi Goddamn by Nina Simone, It's Nation Time by Amiri Baraka, and Citizen by Claudia Rankine. Obviously, there's videos on all of these, so if you want to write about one of the poems or a couple, you can write about. I think I said this before, but maybe like 4 would be the most. I don't know if that's necessarily a good idea to try to write about that many poems. I think 2 could be a solid way to do it. Maybe 1 if you really can dig in and get a lot of research. But yeah, those are the poems that you can choose to write about. I don't know. Maybe it could be interesting to bring in an outside poem other than that. As long as you're using one of the poems that we did in class, maybe I'd be open to using something from outside of class. Maybe try it out on the rough draft, and I'll give you some feedback, or send me an email or something. So those are the poems that we're dealing with. Obviously, there's videos on all of those that you can go back and watch. Okay, so some of my takeaways from the rough drafts, and things that I want to remind you guys of. I feel like I said this a lot with the other essay, but something that I think is easy to fall into, but I think we need to avoid, is having a thesis that's something like, these poems show the struggles of African Americans at the time. I said this about the last essay, how I kind of tried to caution you guys against having a thesis that was like, well, these stories show us how women were treated at the time. So I feel like I'm seeing, people doing that for this essay also. looking at a poem, like Harlem or Mississippi Goddam, and saying, well, this shows us how bad it was for African Americans at this time. And that's true. That's objectively true. Again, I don't think that's a debatable thesis. I just think, like, of course that's accurate, but I just don't think that that is really literary analysis in the way we're trying to do it in this class. I think that is more looking at it as like a historical, I don't know, fossil or something like that, right? I mean, like, okay, well, this shows us what it was like back then. It's like, yes, objectively, it does do that. That is a thing that it does. But the reason I'm pushing back against that is because couldn't we find any poem from, say, 1965 that had to do with race and say, well, this poem shows us what it was like back then? Couldn't we say that about basically any poem that mentions race? I think we could. And for that reason, I don't really find it to be, all that meaningful. Or really, I don't find it to be debatable. I don't think that's really making an argument that you could imagine anyone saying, well, no, it doesn't do that. And so I think what we need to be doing, instead of saying that these poems show us what it was like back then, what we need to be doing is asking the question, what is the political ideology of the poem? What are the political beliefs of the poem? What political ideas are the poems putting out there? And then I think that, the Malcolm X and the Martin Luther King can help us with this, right? Because then we can say, well, do the poems agree more with Malcolm X or with Martin Luther King? And in what specific ways do they agree or disagree with those figures? That's really the thing that I find myself writing on almost every draft that I read, not just for this class, but for my other classes this semester as well, is just telling people that I need them to be more specific. I need you to be more specific when it comes to the thesis. What exactly are the political ideas of the poem? How exactly do they sync up or not with MLK or Malcolm X or anyone else, any other thinker from that time period that you want to include? So your focus needs to be on the poems and what the politics of the poems are. I'll try to connect this back to when we first started talking about literary analysis. If you remember, all the way back at the beginning of the semester, when I did that video on Louis Althusser and ideological state apparatuses, in that video I was trying to explain how a piece of art can take on an ideology, how it can embody an ideology, right? And we did this with the SpongeBob episode at the beginning of the semester, where we said, well, does the episode show us that striking, it works and it's good and we should do it, or does it show us that it's bad and ineffective and not worth it? So what we were doing there is saying, what is the idea of the episode? What is the position of the episode on this topic? So if there we were talking about striking and what the episode thinks about striking, now we're basically looking at, we're asking, what do these poems think about politics? So some of the ways that you might want to think about that are does the poem seem more urgent or more gradual? Does it seem more I think it's Nation Time is the best example of one that's extremely urgent. We need to do this right now. Get out here, get in the streets, take the power, fight the people, take over the schools, whatever it says in that poem, right? Whereas, something like We Shall Overcome, I think it seems much more gradual. We shall overcome someday, right? And that's kind of why I asked you to watch those two videos as part of the same week of class. Because I think we can see how each of those and the performances of them as well as the words goes along kind of with either side of the civil rights movement here. Another way to think about this, what is the goal of the poem? Does the poem, does it sync up more with MLK's insistence on negotiating, and with people in power, compromising with people with power, getting them to make concessions by negotiating? Or is it more interested in taking power? Does it more agree with Malcolm X that power needs to be seized and then used instead of negotiating with the people who are already in power, taking the power yourself? So I would, again, the question we need to be asking is, what are the political ideas of the poems? Your focus needs to be on the poems. Don't write me an essay that's analyzing Letter from Birmingham Jail, right? That Letter from Birmingham Jail, Message to the Grassroots, those should not be your main focus. You should be including those essays only to help us better understand the poems and what the politics of the poems are. So whichever poem you're writing about, I think, does it relate to anything specific that MLK says in Letter from Birmingham Jail? Does it connect to anything specific that Malcolm X says in Message to the Grassroots? I would try to draw out that connection, and then you could, while having a thesis that's like, this poem has, the political beliefs of this poem are blank, whatever you think they are. I also wanted to reiterate here the kind of four main characteristics of black nationalism that I gave you. I think this is important, especially if you're writing about Mississippi Goddam or it's Nation Time. I would have this stuff in mind. Because when I'm asking you what are the politics of the poems, yeah, you can look for specific things in the Malcolm X or in the Martin Luther King. But another way to think about this are so the four things that I gave you as characteristics of black nationalism were racial solidarity, racial unity, self determination, that have to do with the power, taking power yourself, governing yourself, an Afrocentric point of view, a kind of black aesthetic. I think that can come in a lot if you're looking at the form of the poems or the way that they're sung in the videos, the way they're performed in the videos. I talked a lot in the Black Nationalism video about how there was a desire during this time to come up with a uniquely black aesthetic. And I think if you see any of the poems as doing that, you can connect that to a kind of black nationalist politics. And the fourth one was structural racism, was the belief that America is incurably racist, and that you can't just like convince people, or that people can't just have a change of heart to fix racism. That it's institutional, it's structural, it's deeper than that. And like Amiri Baraka says in the Black Arts Movement essay that we read, to fix this would require almost a complete overhaul of society, right? So see if the poems connect to any of those four things. If they do, you can say, well, this poem has a kind of black nationalist politics, that its politics are more revolutionary, its politics connect more with Malcolm X. And I know this because, themes of racial solidarity show up in the poem, because themes of self-determination show up in the poem, because the poem seems more interested in taking power directly rather than negotiating with those in power. If you can say that about one of the poems, then you can say, well, its politics are more radical. It's more like Malcolm X than it is like Martin Luther King, right? So yeah, I think this would just be my main takeaway from looking at some of your drafts. And yeah, would just be to have a thesis that says, here are the political beliefs of the poem. Here's what the poem believes about the politics of the time period. Here's how it fits in with the politics of the time period. Maybe you're looking at the poem and you're like, well, it agrees with MLK in this kind of way, but it agrees with Malcolm X in this way, So maybe it could kind of agree with both in certain ways. But either way, your focus should be on the poem or poems that you're writing about. What are the politics of the poem? How does it fit in with the political ideas of the civil rights movement? As long as you're doing that, you'll be on the right track, and I think you'll get a very good grade. But again, I would just caution you one more time against having a thesis that says, well, it shows us what it was like back then. You've got to be more specific with that. You've got to give me more than that. And it has to deal more with what does the poem believe? What are the ideas of the poem? And like I said, as long as you're doing that, I think it'll work out. All right, best of luck working on revising these. Again, please sign up for these optional meetings. Please give me a question or a thing that was difficult. Please send me any rough drafts that you haven't handed in yet, and please reach out over email if you have any other questions. All right, I'll see you soon with some more videos.